Balanced Approach podcast, hosted by me, Louis Padian. These podcasts are released every week, so be sure to subscribe wherever you get yours to be kept up to date. I really hope that you're enjoying the podcast so far and it's supporting you in living a healthier and happier life. So sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode. In today's episode, we'll be discussing why willpower doesn't work. And it's often something that people attribute their failures to, is that they just don't think that they've tried it enough. They don't think they've tried hard enough. They're not putting enough effort. They don't have enough willpower. And that's simply not the case, especially with a lot of people that I work with. And today we're going to explore how to view willpower and also some alternate strategies of how to get around this, because what we're going to find out is willpower actually isn't something that you're born with or you're born without, or that you need in order to get past these obstacles, achieve your goals. Actually, it's something that we can manipulate, but actually there's other things that we should be focusing on as well. So there's two things that came up when I looked into a lot of the research around this. First one was called ego depletion theory, which I think is a wonderful name, and it suggests that willpower is a finite resource. And this is something that I often see with a lot of patients and clients, is that they are riding their willpower too hard throughout the day. They are tempting themselves far too much, and actually they need to focus on setting up their environment for success, making it easier to make better decisions, rather than just hoping that they can resist the temptation of potentially those highly palatable foods, potentially sitting down on the sofa and not going out for a walk, those sorts of things. That bottle of wine before bed, all these things are slowly tapping into our willpower. And the way that this theory suggests that it works, which it probably does, is that exerting that self-control in one area can deplete our ability to resist temptation in another. So that piece of chocolate that is in the corner of the room that you might catch your eye, you might not even notice it, but you know that it's there on the counter. Throughout the day, it will slowly break away that willpower, you consciously going, no, I'm not going to have that. I'm going to have a piece of fruit instead. I'm going to have my lunch, all these sorts of things. However, that's fine. But if you've got sweets somewhere else, if you've got a chocolate bar elsewhere, if you've got that Netflix series that you want to get into in that night, but you're planning to go for a walk, you're battling against those things all day. And like I said, it's a finite resource. And by the end of the day, when we're tired, and this is when we tend to see people overeating, potentially binging, is in the evenings when they're tired, when they've had a long day, when they've really got down to the last bit of that willpower and they think, fuck it, I might as well. Another way that they sort of reframe this was sort of limited capacity with regards to a muscle. So you've seen it like a muscle. Again, repeated use throughout the day and overcoming multiple temptations throughout the day can leave us almost depleted and more susceptible to unhealthy choices or less desirable choices. And this is why the start of the day can be a really, really good position or opportunity to make things easier. A simple thing that I do if I'm going to gym in the morning or go for a run, first of all, I get my head around what I'm doing in the morning. So I've got a set plan that I'm sticking to. So I know what gym session I'm doing. I know what run plan I'm doing. But I'll lay my kit out the night before. I will make sure the kitchen's probably a bit tidy, especially around the coffee machine, as that's where things tend to accumulate. I'll make sure the coffee machine's topped up with water. I'll make sure I've got my glasses that I like to use, those sorts of things, for an orange juice, a banana, those sorts of things, making it easier for me to make those harder choices earlier in the day. Plus, I'm not breaking down the willpower. If I get up and I've got to go through my drawers in the dark, and then I've got to clean up the kitchen before I get out for that run, I've got to try and maybe do some washing up before I go out, I'm eating away at that time that I've got in the morning, and I've got limited time anyway. So it makes it harder and harder for me to get out to want to do that run. If I can make it as easy as possible for me to do that run in the morning, I know that that's going to help me build momentum, which a lot of things I talk about with my clients is building momentum with these habits and behaviors. And also means that potentially later in the day, if I'm tempted by something, I've probably got more willpower, if at all, but if I'm at all tempted. But also having that sort of flexibility with my approach to food means that those things aren't as hard for me to turn down, because say for a chocolate bar, for example, people tend to say, oh, I'm cutting out chocolate if I'm trying to lose weight. Having that flexibility and having chocolates, little portions in mindful amounts regularly, can actually take that power away from the chocolate and give it to you. And if you've had chocolate yesterday, you've got chocolate tomorrow, or you've had a chocolate into your plan today, then you know what, that other bar of chocolate won't seem as special, because you know what, I've got some later, or I've had some yesterday, or I've got some tomorrow. And it's not as that forbidden fruit that we might see with the sort of Adam and Eve effect, where people don't have it for so long, it whittles away at their willpower again, that when it comes to it, they can't control their behaviors and emotions around that food. So what sort of things would be useful to focus on? So my opinion and my approach is around building even tiny habits, focusing on small achievable goals and really getting those reps in to become more automatic. So get up in the morning, having your fruit, maybe having a piece of fruit with some orange juice and maybe a coffee for me. That means that I'm getting ahead of my 5 a day already as I get up in the morning. Getting my kit laid up in the morning, laid out the night before, is part of my bedtime routine, and that helps me build that habit in the morning as well. But that laying out my kit and getting that stuff ready the night before is part of a habit as well, because it helps me wind down, puts my mind at ease, and it's something that I do just before I get to bed. And as well with that, I'll probably get my work stuff ready as well, so it just means that I'm not stressed in the morning, because I know if I'm stressed, if I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed by things, then I'm less likely to make better decisions in the morning. Another thing is environmental cues. So this is what I was talking about, having the chocolate bars lying around. And one of the things that I find really key, the placements of foods and things that we not even consciously aware of around us will have an impact on our behaviors throughout the day. So one thing that we do is get a fruit bowl out on the side, and we have a snack box where we've got like some chocolate bars, potentially some protein bars, some crisps and things like that, and they're tucked away in the cupboard at the back. And also, the chocolate bars that we have are in smaller portions. They're probably not the most delicious chocolate bars that we could get, sorry. And they are things that are potentially a bit more mindful on the calorie side. So the two that we potentially might have in the house might be a Galaxy Ripple or an Aero Mint, just a single stick. And that really helps as well. But keeping them out of sight and out of mind, and having things that you want to do, making it more easier, having that environment set up for your success, is a big part of that. So what should you do instead of relying solely on willpower? Big part of it is starting small. So don't try and eat the elephant all in one go. Don't try and completely overhaul your lifestyle. Have a look at opportunities where it could be a simple switch in there. So a good thing that with regards to food could be to replace or reduce rather than removing. Removing is an option as well, but replacing and reducing are two of the better ones. So if we're going from a full sugar to a sugar-free drink, so a full sugar Coca-Cola to Coke Zero, then that's a simple swap in there. We don't actually have to change our habits and behaviors that much. We just have to change the habit of what we're picking up off the shelf, but the amount that we might be drinking throughout the day might not change that much. Then we might have a look at reducing that as well. So potentially buying smaller amounts. So instead of buying a big 2-3 litre bottle, we might buy some 330ml cans and having a bit more of a mindful amount on those, because that's portioned out for us. So it makes those more mindful breaks between drinks potentially, and gives you a point of reflection where you can go, right, do I want another, or am I satisfied with that? Another thing is, like we said, design your environment. So keeping foods readily available, storing potentially less desirable options out of sight, and reduce the need for that constant willpower. If you're surrounded by chocolate and chocolate's available everywhere, then maybe we need to reduce the amount that we've got within the house, maybe make it less appealing as well. So potentially ones that you will enjoy, but potentially not the most delicious food that you can think of. And that just, again, makes it easier to be like, actually, no, that's probably not for me, or maybe a bit more mindful around my portion sizes. So planning, another thing is planning specific actions in advance. So having a plan, and this is what we spoke about around having gym routine and exercise routine, having a place that you go, and then following up and almost habit stacking those. So on the Monday after work, I go to run club. In the morning before work, I go for a walk. After my lunchtime, I go for a 10-minute. After having my lunch at work, I go for a 10-minute walk to help with digestion, and also a bit of social as well. So having that plan in place is really, really useful. As I've said, one of the ones that I do is having your workout clothes ready in the morning. Again, just when I wake up in the morning, I'll have my breakfast, or I'll have a coffee and some orange juice, maybe some fruit, and I'll go for my run. That's sort of a plan that I have, that implementation intention, so what I'm intending to do. Last but not least, on the sort of actions that I'd recommend, celebrating progress. So one thing that often people do is not really monitor and manage what they're currently doing, and not celebrating even small steps forward. Often we compare ourselves to the ideal standard. So when I sit down with someone, fruit and veg is an easy sort of example to use, and we sit down and we say, wow, how many portions of fruit and veg are you having at the moment? And they might say, I'm not having any, or I'm having one. I go, right, so let's see how we get on. Try and get one more in each day, and we'll go from there. And when we review the next week, how'd you get on? Well, I didn't quite hit the 5. Well, we weren't aiming 5, we were just aiming for one more. And actually, you've hit one more every day, and that's amazing, because that's doubling the amount that we had on our fruit and veg, which is awesome. And we've just got to be more consistent with that. But again, these things are, and one of the things that I always say to a lot of my patients and clients is, things that we talk about are really simple. Doesn't mean that they're easy to implement. And I think it's a really powerful thing to actually sit down, reflect, and talk about all the things that you've done well this week. Often something that I'll sit down with clients, patients do is go, right, what went well this week? What sort of things have went well today? And often it might be a daily sort of habit that we're trying to build in there, because sometimes it can be a bit hard to think of 2 or 3 things that have gone well today. Sometimes it could be having those difficult conversations. It could have been, oh, I remembered to get the washing out of the washing machine. I go out for a walk after my lunch. But by the end of the week, if we've got 2 or 3, then we've got 14 or 21 things, or between 14 and 21 things that we've done well that week, which is showing us actually that we're doing a lot well already. And often when I sit down with someone, a big part of that will get them to recognize that they've actually probably got a lot on their plate, or they're doing a lot already and they're not giving themselves credit for. They're just focusing on the 5 to 10% that isn't quite going to plan yet. And actually realizing that you're doing the 80 to 90% really well, frees up a lot of headspace, frees up a lot of judgment, frees up a lot of criticism and sort of shaming that you're not good enough, you're not doing what you should be doing, when actually I'm actually doing a hell of a lot already. And me taking away those negative conversations might actually free up the headspace in order to get that last 5-10% a little bit better. So that can be a really, really useful thing to celebrate progress, acknowledge how successful you've been, and also reinforcing the habits and behaviors that you're currently doing. Visual sort of element to this. So if you've got a habit tracker, my clients will have little graphs that they pick up and depending on like how successful they've been with that. And those things are really, really inspiring and motivating as well. Other things that are really useful to focus on with this, and it links well with that celebrating progress, is self-compassion. Often people think it's just about being soft on yourself, but no, it's about that kindness. And that 5 to 10% that I was talking about, instead of criticizing ourselves around that, understanding that we are human, that we are not our thoughts, that everyone else struggles and nobody's perfect, and that's okay. We're all perfectly imperfect. And actually, this can take the pressure off us as well, just to try our best, because that's all we can do. If you're trying your best, and this is often when I sit down with people, they will say, they'll feel like they just don't try hard enough. And often, and I think potentially that it's one of the rarest things that I find with someone is that they don't try hard enough. Potentially they're just putting that effort in the wrong place, or they're not focusing on the right things for them. So that can be a really useful thing as well. So hopefully you've enjoyed today. Hopefully it's giving you a bit of a overview and open up your eyes a bit about why willpower isn't the be all end all, and actually giving you some useful tools to take away there around that self-compassion, starting with small habits, setting your environment up for success, having that implementation intentions where you're having that plan of action in place, celebrating progress as we go. And all these things can be really useful, and don't rely or whittle away at that willpower each day. So focusing on those areas, getting a plan of action in place, being a lot more compassionate, starting small and being consistent with them and monitoring that progress as we go, is definitely a lot more effective way than just thinking that you need to rely on willpower and holding on for as long as possible. So there you have it. Thank you very much for listening to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. If you have any questions, queries, or would like to reach out to me, please do. I am at Louis Padian Nutrition, which is at LOUISPADIAN Nutrition on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and all other social media platforms. If you're looking for support in achieving your goals and living a healthier, happier, and more balanced life in the process, click the link below and inquire about working with me. Remember to subscribe to the Balanced Approach podcast wherever you're listening for more insightful episodes, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.